Hey everyone, I'm Sebastian from Cinemageddon Reviews, and the day has finally arrived. The moment fans have been waiting for and everyone else was dreading. The champion of artists' rights, as well as the undisputed king of haha, I told you so. The greatest movie in the world, or the worst movie in the world depending on who you ask, because apparently we can't decide if it's just okay or even just good for some reason. The myth, the legend, ladies and gentlemen, this is Zack Snyder's Justice League, also known as the Snyder Cut. If there ever was a movie that has brought me much annoyance and despair over the years, it has to be this one. This is a movie whose very existence was the subject of much debate and harsh belittling by fans of opposite sides online. I received my own share of online bullshit because of this. I was not looking forward to this movie in the slightest as a result of this. Not just because I had no confidence in it being good, but also because I feared of the effects this movie's existence would have on the landscape of cinema, giving studios a warped idea of listening to the fans who whine and complain until they get what they want. Much like Paramount and that awful Sonic the Hedgehog movie. But hey, no harm done, right? It's not like any visual effects studios got closed and people lost their jobs. Isn't that right, motion picture company? Nevertheless, whether through sheer willpower or God having a weird sense of humor, the Snyder Cut is real and is finally available across all of the US through HBO Max. And I had a chance to watch it last Saturday via pre-screening. Even had a chance to actually get out a first impressions video, which for some reason started out with a couple of dislikes, and while that remains one of my biggest accomplishments this day, much like Maxwell Lord said,
life is good, but it can be better.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you my ultimate breakdown of the Snyder Cut. But not just any old review, mind you. No. We're going to take a little trip down the proverbial rabbit hole and dive deep down into the history of how this movie even came to be. No lies, no misinformation, just pure, honest facts before getting into my official thoughts on the movie itself. Because several questions remain before we can actually be able to continue talking about this movie. For example, how did we even get to this point in history, when a filmmaker managed to be given the chance to finish his own version of a movie that he walked out on years ago following a family tragedy? What led to the events that caused the original theatrical version to be released at all? And more importantly, after being subjected to much needed growth and change, can I still be objective about the Snyder Cut without letting myself be influenced by my negative opinions on Man of Steel or Batman v Superman? Well, only one way to find out. For better or for worse, but mostly for the better. This is the story of the fabled and mythical marvel, swear to God that was not intended to be a pun, that is Zack Snyder's Justice League. March 26, 2016. The internet is waiting impatiently for the release of DC's upcoming follow-up to the divisive start of the DCEU in the form of Man of Steel. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice is released with a much more negative and harsher reception, not just by critics, but by comic book fans as well. It manages to be modestly successful financially, but whatever divisiveness was formed around the discourse surrounding Man of Steel was cranked up to 11 with Batman v Superman. People either really hated it or really loved it. There was no in between. Warner Brothers begins to notice, and to an extent, so does the director of the film, Zack Snyder. While conflicting reports continue to surface over how the thought process went into handling the backlash of Batman v Superman, one thing was made very clear during the period of course correction for the franchise following its release. Zack Snyder originally intended to have Batman v Superman serve as the darkest story in the franchise, while following it up with Justice League as one of the more hopeful, lighthearted, and optimistic films in the canon. To quote Justice League cinematographer Fabian Wagner, he is a huge fan of the original comic books and the characters and has a fantastic knowledge of that world. We chatted for an hour or so about his general ideas for the production moving to look forwards. Zack wanted to get away from the stylized, desaturated, super high contrast looks of other films in the franchise. I am someone who likes the light very naturally, so that fitted my work ethic. It had already been decided that Justice League would shoot on 35mm film, and although I had not shot celluloid for several years, I was excited by the prospect. This is important for me to say because what would eventually happen with Warner Brothers and subsequently with the finished product of the film would come back to bite the studio viciously in the ass, harder than the decision was to shove their entire theatrical lineup on HBO Max without consulting the directors or subsidiaries that were in charge of making them.
You flew too close to the sun.
Following the disastrous release of Batman v Superman, Snyder and Warner Brothers both worked together to try to lighten the tone of the franchise going forward, causing a lot of changes off-screen and on-screen. The first casualty of this mess had to be David Ayer's original cut of Suicide Squad, which aimed to tell a grittier and much more adult story, only to be catastrophically watered down both in tone, structure, and even editing. Whatever David Ayer's original cut of the movie was supposed to be, which according to him was supposed to be the theatrical cut, insisting that there wouldn't be an extended cut of the movie until they released an extended cut of the movie, is now lost on the cutting room floor with an unwatchable monstrosity that got shot out into theaters with no characterization outside of cringy trailer lines.
What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
Horrible sloppy editing.
This is Katana. She's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
An inconsistent tone that goes from Training Day to The Fast and Furious in the drop of a hat.
You got a boyfriend?
And most controversially of all, it made the worst mistake possible by taking one of the most anticipated characters marketed for the film, the Clown Prince of Crime himself, the Joker, and reduced his contributions to the movie so much that you can eliminate any single scene he's in from the theatrical and extended cut of the movie and it would remain exactly the same. I should also mention that I was one of the few people who defended Jared Leto's Joker when everyone else was talking shit about him because of the tattoos and grill. I find it almost ironic that most of the same people that made fun of me for defending him before the movie came out were also making fun of me for shitting on him after the movie came out, even after both he and Ayer expressed multiple times how angry and disappointed they were at the amount of screen time that was taken from the theatrical film. Unlike Man of Steel or even Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad was widely rejected from everybody, from critics to audiences, and only really defended by people who either are really too stubborn to admit that the movie is bad, or had a hate boner with Rotten Tomatoes for negatively criticizing the movies. Except they're not.
What the fuck is wrong with critics? That was an awesome fucking movie!
No, it's not.
June 2nd, 2017. Wonder Woman releases worldwide to near universal acclaim and financial success. One of the best superhero movies released that year and one of the few happy moments that I had to remember 2017 before Puerto Rico got blackened by a horror named Irma and an even bigger horror named Maria. The movie successfully proves to be the best film that the DCEU had released up to this point, with few criticisms being labeled against the third act and its ending, and to the surprise of absolutely nobody, years later, we would find out by director Patty Jenkins' own admission that the clunky ending was the result of studio interference. The original end of the first movie was also smaller, but the studio made me change it at the last minute, and so that's always been a little bit of a bummer that that's the one thing people talk about, because I agreed and I told the studio we didn't have time to do it, but it was what it was. I ended up loving it, but it was not the original end of the movie. Despite the movie being destined for unmitigated success, the studio still kept twiddling their thumbs hoping things would play out in a more appropriate manner, to the point where they appointed Jeff Johns, longtime writer for DC Comics, as the producer for the DCEU going forward after 2016, literally trying to make a Kevin Feige out of a man whose only past experience serving as a film producer was working as a co-producer and creative consultant on the first attempt at a DC Extended Universe, Green Lantern.
God damn, that's beautiful.
You're welcome, Canada.
The studio by this point has shown to be more concerned with the success of their franchise that they completely forgot and or ignored one of the most fundamental aspects of filmmaking: having trust in your cast and crew. Let's talk about Justice League. Before the backlash surrounding Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, Zack Snyder was selected to be the showrunner for the DCEU, starting with Man of Steel and continuing from there. The original plan was for there to be a sequel to Man of Steel, which would show Superman facing the consequences of his actions following the events of the first movie. Not a whole lot is known over what is originally going to be Man of Steel 2, if there even was going to be one, but in 2013 the world was shocked to find out that the official follow-up to Man of Steel was going to involve a team-up between Superman and Batman.
I want you to remember, Clark, in all the years to come, in all your most private moments, I want you to remember my hand at your throat. I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
Whoa! What? What? What?
Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. What should have been DC's first big step into the big boy jungle gyms of the superhero blockbuster scene instead became a cautionary tale of what happens when you let yourself be overwhelmed with a combination of over-ambition, success envy, and general incompetence. I have softened my views on Batman v Superman over the past few months of writing this review, mainly because I've come up with my own interpretations and views around the film, and also because I got sick and tired of holding an angry grudge on a movie that, despite its quality, was one I genuinely loved wholeheartedly when it first came out. However, rationalization towards certain choices aside, I cannot in good conscience say that this is a good movie. Maybe it isn't the worst superhero ever made, or even really the worst DC movie ever made, but I'd be lying to myself and making a huge disservice to a director whom I greatly admire and respect by calling it a masterpiece or even great. I stand by what I said about it being a great movie in theory, being crushed by the weight of its own ambition and creativity, but I've come to terms with the movie being seen as a cult classic by a minority who clearly sees something in it that I just cannot see.
Not for lack of trying.
I'm also 100% convinced, even though I have no source to confirm it, so it's all speculation, that while Snyder got to release his full version of the film in the form of the Ultimate Edition, Warner Brothers also interfered in several aspects of the movie, while also giving him more creative control by comparison to Man of Steel, which felt more like a Christopher Nolan Batman movie than a Zack Snyder Superman movie. Going back to what was originally being planned for Zack Snyder's DCEU ideas, what was originally going to be a 2-movie follow-up to Batman v Superman revolving around the formation of the Justice League and an invasion from Superman's greatest nemesis, was instead the biggest victim of Warner Brothers' insipid course correction. In what can only be described as proof that Snyder had a plan for the DCEU, while DC had absolutely no plan for what to do with their franchise, Warner Brothers, despite the director giving them new ideas that would lighten the tone for the movies, decided not only to scrap the 2-movie structure they were originally working on, of which the majority of the filming had already been completed, but to bring in Joss Whedon on board to help rewrite the movie and to try to fix what was in their eyes a sinking ship. Zack Snyder tried to work with the conditions that he was given, but both he and screenwriter Chris Terrio were both given a terrible hand to work with, including multiple rewrites and reshoots that frustrated the hell out of both parties, despite each trying to cooperate and work together to make the movie come about. DC and Warner Brothers, however, were more concerned with releasing a Justice League movie added to a mostly Marvel-dominated superhero landscape and trying to fix the mistakes left over from Batman v Superman, with Jeff Johns stating that their plan, implying they had one in the first place, was for the movie to be, quote, hopeful and optimistic.
They're just from
everyone loves Superman and knows how important Superman is, and you know, again, it's not in my wheelhouse now to you know, to really say anything beyond that, but yeah, everyone they agree with your sentiment.
Why the fuck you lying?
Remember that for me, will you? Because it's gonna be hilarious when we actually start talking about the damn Snyder Cut. July 23rd, 2016. The first official trailer hits more than a year before the release of the film. This trailer is 100% pure Zack Snyder footage. Unbeknownst to many fans, this would be the closest that they would get to witnessing Zack Snyder's original cut of the movie before Joss Whedon was brought on board. The next couple of trailers will look totally different. This is when things go from bad to utterly fucking heartbreaking. On March 12, 2017, just a few weeks before the release of the first trailer for the movie, Zack Snyder's daughter, Autumn Snyder, died via suicide after a long and tragic battle with depression. Her death would be the straw that would break the camel's back in regards to the troubled production of the movie, which would continue following May 2017 when Zack Snyder stepped down from directing duties in order to properly deal with her passing and be able to spend time with his family as a result. Autumn Snyder's death is a horrible fucking tragedy, and one that to this day I feel nothing but sadness and sympathy for both him and his family. Since the tragedy, Snyder and his wife Deborah have both been very outspoken when it comes to discussing mental health, and their fans responded by organizing multiple fundraisers in support of his daughter and raising thousands of dollars for suicide prevention. I give a lot of flack towards fanboys and fangirls of any kind of fandom due to the toxicity that they produce and any subsequent bigotry that expels from it. But what these fans did was unlike anything that most fans would ever be expected to do, and whatever their motivations were for doing so, resulted in thousands of dollars being raised for a cause that, in my opinion, doesn't get a whole lot of discourse, which I find to be very alarming for a number of reasons. This, in my opinion, is what ultimately led to the death of the original cut of Justice League and the birth of the now infamous Whedon cut. July 22nd, 2017. The newest trailer for Justice League is released and things begin to look different. Many scenes look similar to the original trailer, but there were a lot more jokes, a red-tinted sky was showing during scenes that were originally taking place at night, and the tone from the trailer felt completely different from that of the first trailer.
Ride ain't over yet.
My man.
These were all aspects visible to the audience on screen. Off-screen, however, more behind-the-scenes meddling was taking place, as Danny Elfman was brought in to compose the movie and stated that he would include both his original Batman theme and a rendition of the John Williams Superman theme from the 70s in a pathetic attempt to try and lure in fans with nostalgic pandering.
Batman has only had one theme, your theme, yeah.
More rewrites and reshoots were also scheduled and done, with lots of footage being left out on the cutting room floor, including 90% of Cyborg's contributions to the movie, Steppenwolf's motivation, and any inclusion of Darkseid outside of a throwaway line in the middle of the movie.
Find the last one. Its power will cleanse this world. For the unity. For Darkseid.
Holy shit, that sucked.
The movie also received an unnecessary overhaul, resulting in the addition of many cringe-inducing jokes that missed more than they hit. The worst of these changes, however, and the one that got the most scrutiny, has to be the reshoots regarding Superman himself, Henry Cavill. During production of the movie, by the time reshoots were announced, again the movie had already finished filming by the time Snyder left, Cavill was busy flexing his brawny man arms for Mission Impossible Fallout, which had him wearing a brawny man mustache to go with the character that he was playing. For reasons that to this day escape any and all sense and logic, Paramount and Warner Brothers couldn't come up with an agreement on how to work around this little issue since Cavill was under contract not to shave it off, and doing so would require the movie to be delayed and shut down temporarily, as they would not be able to continue without him looking the part. Paramount was offered the chance to be recompensed for lost time and let him shave it off for the total of $3 million. Now, you might think that for insurance reasons and the fact that these are two big and powerful companies, that $3 million isn't really a big deal. Apparently somebody was holding the idiot ball that day and the idea was rejected, since Paramount did not want to delay the movie's release any further. To WB's credit, this was not their fault, as the idea was proposed by Mission Impossible Fallout director Christopher McQuarrie, but rejected by Paramount themselves, and left Warner Bros. With the unnecessary task of having to use digital enhancement to remove the mustache entirely, costing Warner Bros. Over $25 million alone. And what did those $25 million give us? Congratulations, Warner Brothers. You managed to make one of the most gorgeous men in Hollywood look like the face a killer would use in a slasher movie. However long you think it took me to edit that, probably significantly longer. November 17th, 2017. Justice League is released in theaters everywhere, and the reviews range from "at least it's not Batman v Superman" to "look how they massacred my boy." But what critics and audiences say wouldn't really matter given what was about to happen. Originally, the movie's initial budget was $220 million, but with the massive reshoots, rewrites, and CGI monster mashing that went into Henry Cavill's face, Joss Whedon's Frankenstein monster had a cost of approximately $300 million, not counting marketing. And despite strong overseas numbers, the movie managed to recoup a sad and pathetic $229,024,295 domestically. To put it in comparison, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice cost around $250 to $300 million and recouped more than $330 million domestically. That means that Justice League, despite making a decent profit worldwide, is still considered a financial flop.
I failed him.
By this point, Justice League's story would be over and done with. A troubled production with behind-the-scenes meddling and a talented director that got screwed over by a studio more focused on course-correcting than making a decent product, and a horrible tragedy that would serve as the final straw for a filmmaker that had just about enough. The story would normally end here, but like the Man of Steel himself, the movie would not stay dead, and its fans were not going to let it do so. Following the messy release and even messier reception of Justice League, many disappointed and disheartened fans began to let their displeasure be heard online, with many decrying that the movie that they got was not the movie that they were promised or expecting, seeing as how it was rewritten and reshot with nary any of Zack Snyder's original vision in mind. This resulted in the formation of the now infamous Release the Snyder Cut movement, a campaign formed by fans all over the globe who were championing for Warner Bros. To release the original unedited cut of Justice League that Zack Snyder originally worked on before leaving production. Fans everywhere kept insisting that such a cut existed despite every force on the planet telling them otherwise, one of those forces being yours truly.
Holy shit! You're not gonna believe this! Look what I have in my hand right now, guys! It's the Snyder Cut! It actually exists! I'm just kidding. It's Justice League. You know, the only cut that exists of this movie.
That one didn't age quite so well.
No, it did not. Fans everywhere began posting and tweeting out to Warner Bros. To release the original cut of Justice League that Zack Snyder tried to make. They tweeted, they called, they peacefully protested, and they even went so far as to hire planes to fly around the studio holding banners asking them to release the movie. It became such an unprecedented moment that many of the cast and crew began to notice, including Zack Snyder himself, but it didn't stop there. I mentioned before that fans organized multiple fundraisers in support of suicide prevention, and the majority of these fans did so as part of the movement, using their platform to raise awareness of a serious topic, as well as raising a lot of money to a cause that could really use it. No matter how angry I get at the problematic side of this movement, and believe me, I haven't forgotten about the toxicity that's been pouring out from it, this is one accomplishment that I believe is worth praising indefinitely. Like I said before, it wasn't just fans who were crying out for the movie's release. Several cast and crew members did as well. Jason Momoa was one of the most vocal champions for the movie's release. Kieran Hines, who played Steppenwolf, was one of the first to actually disown the original version, saying that it was not the movie that he agreed to make originally. And of course, Snyder himself would not stop sharing content related to his original cut of the movie, giving fans more than just a little bit of excitement over what could have been and what could be if the Snyder Cut were to see the light of day. Bear in mind that the chances of a Snyder Cut movie ever realistically happening at the time were less than zero, and the idea of it ever even being a possibility was left to fan speculation, rumor, and a lot lot of misinformation. And then the day finally came, and I will never forget that day, because that'll be a day that will remain in infamy for the rest of my life.
Now I've heard there was a secret chord that David played, and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you?
I'm just so moved by this.
It's beautiful.
August 22nd, 2020. The Snyder Cut surfaces for the first time ever for everyone to see in all of its 4:3 aspect ratio glory. And what was originally nothing but ideas that would never see the light of day was now a fully realized idea that will be made available for streaming on HBO Max in 2021. The fans lost their minds. Critics everywhere were bewildered and mixed, as some were happy and excited to see Zack finally get his vision realized, while others were seeing this as a detriment to the landscape of film and showcasing concerns of other studios following suit, and giving into fan demands whenever something happens that they refuse to accept. To be fair, it's happened before. My feelings on the trailer at the time were originally more filled with dread and despair, mostly because of the fact that the movie seemingly willed itself into existence, and also because I was getting harassed by a publication channel that was spreading a lot of speculation as fact. So seeing this trailer and how they responded to it afterwards was absolutely soul crushing and humiliating, and my respect for them died the same way that Zod did. I've had a long and excruciating journey with the DCU up to this point, and this is the movie I genuinely did not want to see the light of day of because of all the mental gymnastics I was put under by toxic fans and toxic publications who couldn't be bothered to do any kind of proper research. As you can imagine, my mind was filled with a lot of angry thoughts, and I genuinely dreaded the day that this movie would come out. So much so that it inspired me to come out of my 1.5-year long hiatus from reviewing just to be able to review it and put an end to it for me personally. And then something happened. My entire world was turned upside down. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine having a wake-up call as big as this. Everything I've been led to believe about the movie, about Snyder, Whedon, Warner Brothers, everything was either a lie or misinformation. I felt like a fool. To quote an overused meme,
"They played us like a damn fiddle!"
I had a lot of plans over what I originally wanted to do for the month of March revolving around the Snyder Cut, but those plans were immediately crushed because of this article, as I could not in good conscience continue with this idea knowing what the reason behind it was and the truth that contradicted it. In that despair, I began to write. And write and write and write until I came up with my own little coping mechanism to try and make sense of everything that happened. I plan on one day showcasing what exactly was it that I wrote here on Cinemageddon, but for now, I want everybody watching this to know that what I'm going to say, everything I'm about to say about this movie is 100% me. Nobody else. I had the chance to see the movie before many other people could, and I wanted to be as three-dimensional and open-minded about it as possible, as I wanted to tackle this free of any bias or contempt for the DCU of old. And now, it leads us to this. This is a review I never thought I would be making, but here it is. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, I'm Sebastian from Cinemageddon Reviews. This is Zack Snyder's Justice League. The movie begins immediately following the death of Superman while fighting the CGI ogre formerly known as General Zod, as his cries get echoed loudly all over the world, awakening the formerly teased mother boxes that were presently shown throughout Batman v Superman. Feeling guilty and trying to own up to the promise that he made to Supes before he died, Batman, played by Ben Affleck, is seeking the help of other metahumans who can join his cause for protecting the Earth. Not that his anger and hatred arguably caused the death of the Man of Steel. Alongside Wonder Woman, played by Gal Gadot, looking just as strong and powerful here as she did in Wonder Woman 1984. Together, they enlist the help of Barry Allen, aka The Flash, played by Ezra Miller, Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman, played by Jason Momoa, and Victor Stone, aka Cyborg, played by Ray Fisher, to try to uncover the mystery of the mother boxes and to put a stop to a powerful being known as Steppenwolf, played by Kieran Hines, from locating said mother boxes and summoning the big bad boss of the franchise, the Thanos to their Avengers if you will, just to see how many get offended by that comparison. The ruler of Apocalypse and the only man powerful enough to drive Superman insane, Darkseid. Where do I even begin with this? Well, how about we start with the fact that this movie has a 4-hour runtime, and yet it feels like it only lasted about 2 or 3. I ask that because some people seem to be criticizing the 4-hour runtime, and I questioned it myself as well in the past, I will admit, but having actually seen the movie, having sat through all 4 infernal hours of it, honestly, I kinda wish it were longer.
Are you crazy?
Make no mistake, Zack Snyder's Justice League is long, but not in a bad way. It's long in that this probably would have worked better as a miniseries kind of way, like what they did with The Hateful Eight on Netflix. However, even taking into account how long the movie is, I genuinely feel like the movie didn't last long enough. It breezes by so smoothly and so fast despite being a bit of a slow burn, and it does not waste any of your time as a viewer. Every frame of this movie is either important for the story or so visually appealing that you cannot and will not take your eyes off of it. I never even bothered getting up to go to the bathroom. I kept sitting down watching it because it was just that good and it kept me engaged, even during moments without action. The movie definitely feels very episodic with how each part is played out, and honestly, it makes you wonder how would the response be if they actually did release it as a miniseries instead of a 4-hour long marathon of awesomeness. I would say maybe it would have been nice to have the option for those who don't have time to sit through 4 hours, but I really think that's more of a suggestion and not really a necessity. What about the story itself? Story-wise, it's nothing groundbreaking, despite how much actual groundbreaking Steppenwolf and Darkseid do in the movie. It's a story about a team forming up to defend the world of a rising threat that's out of this world, who also happens to be a messenger for another big bad who's only being seen in the shadows. What I will say makes this one stand out is that unlike the Avengers, just to name an example, this one has a lot of important stakes involved. The world is under a proverbial time bomb waiting to go off due to the nightmare that Batman had in the events of Batman v Superman. We know that something is going to happen to Superman, we know that there's an all-powerful being involved, and we know that the world is going to be destroyed, leaving nothing but an empty Mad Max-inspired wasteland filled with parademons. Batman knows this, which is why he's trying so hard to bring this team together despite not exactly having the best people skills. But his desperation is motivated by faith and hope to keep the world safe after arguably causing the world to collapse by being inadvertently responsible for Superman's death.
You'll be here, Alfred, I know it.
What makes you so sure?
Faith, Alfred. Faith.
As for our villains, Steppenwolf is quite honestly a pretty intimidating and monstrous nightmare. No, not that one. Never mind that scary ass looking armor of his and that weapon that kinda makes him look like an overpowered Dark Souls boss. His character arc in the movie is honestly more complex than I expected it to be. My favorite show of all time is the Bruce Timm Justice League cartoon. I've seen every single episode from the original series to Unlimited, and yet I cannot remember a single thing about Steppenwolf as a character. I know that he was in the show, but his contributions were so minor, I guess, that I honestly don't even remember even being in the show in the first place. So this movie was in many ways a pretty good and very fresh introduction to this character to what otherwise would have been a very D-list character from my childhood. So God help me if he were as memorable and badass in the show as he was in this. Not only is Steppenwolf amazing to look at and crazy powerful, but his relationship with Darkseid is also very interesting. The movie doesn't need to spell anything out, but it's clear that the history they share is one of much regret and disappointment, and his desire and motivation is fueled by his respect and loyalty to his cause, despite the little respect he gets from Darkseid's peons, which for DC fans everywhere involves a creepy ass looking Desaad serving as the voice for Darkseid when he's not around, and even though she doesn't get to do much in the movie, this marks the first live action movie appearance of arguably the greatest DC villain ever, Granny Goodness! The fact that she wasn't the main villain of this movie is proof that the writers didn't want to end this story with our heroes getting massacred.
I I've had quite enough of that behavior.
One of the things I was dreading and fearing about this movie the most before its release was the tone. I was not a fan of the overly dark and depressing tone that Batman v Superman had, mostly because to me it clashed with the tone that one would expect from a story involving Superman. Justice League, however, managed to remedy that by sticking with a tone that manages to be mature and action-packed, while also being hopeful, lighthearted, and brimming with joy and optimism. But wait, aren't you talking about the butchered Whedon cut that replaced all the dark and gritty stuff with a lighthearted tone and comedy? Whines the strawman commentator. Well, no. You see, to answer your question, this is the Snyder Cut that we're talking about here. As far as I'm concerned, the Whedon cut never happened. In fact, you see this? Now it's gone. Like I said before, the Snyder Cut, the one that we're talking about right here, is hopeful, optimistic, and filled with joy, lightheartedness, and fun. You hear that, Jeff Johns? The movie you guys wanted to make all along was right here and you didn't even know it.
You dumb fuck!
Now make no mistake, this movie isn't exactly for all ages, though one advantage of it being on HBO Max is that kids will be able to watch it without their parents knowing and experience this as their first R-rated movie. Not that we condone that kind of behavior on this channel, mind you. No. This is a family and friendly place, and we here at Cinemageddon do not condone children going behind their parents' backs and doing things they shouldn't be allowed to be doing. Nothing at all. Absolutely no sir. The movie is R-rated for a reason. It's violent as hell, but, and I mean this as a fan of Zack Snyder's previous work, this is probably his tamest R-rated movie by comparison to Watchmen, 300, and Dawn of the Dead. It feels like what The Dark Knight would have felt like if it was given an R rating, the one that they narrowly avoided receiving. Not that it really matters because the MPA is bullshit and everyone knows it. The action is over the top and crazy, and the special effects look fantastic for a production that was completed using a budget of $70 million while working during a pandemic. In fact, for the most part, this movie looks and feels like it was made on a bigger budget, and the effects that were clearly completed during the pandemic stand out for looking polished and well composited. For the most part. Zack Snyder has stated multiple times that he was not paid a dime for this movie, very likely as a way of being provided more creative control over the movie and its execution. You can definitely feel that this movie is a passion project and a labor of love with every frame of footage that is being presented. There is a lot of hard work and dedication presented on screen, both by the visuals and the characters interacting with them. Speaking of which... Okay, I'm gonna make this quick because I want to gush about the new cast of heroes this movie presents us with. Batman is great, Ben Affleck is great, and his character development from BVS goes into play a lot better here than it did in BVS, ironically enough. Gal Gadot is great as always, Jason Momoa is great with what he was given, though I personally feel like this movie could have given him more to deal with. Let's talk about Cyborg and the Flash, shall we? Ezra Miller's Flash was one of the few bright spots in the Whedon cut, hampered only by terrible humor.
This isn't funny!
Here he remains the goofy oddball of the group, while maintaining a sense of youthful optimism and excitement for what he's taking part of. That being said, he's also nervous since he's never really been a part of something as big as this before, and his confidence comes into question throughout the movie as he struggles with the question of what he is and what he's capable of. His arc pays off ridiculously well in the final climax of the movie in a twist I didn't really expect, but found surprisingly profound and moving regardless. I kind of got anxious seeing what happened and what was happening, something that I can't really say has happened to me with a lot of recent blockbusters that I've seen. Ezra Miller delivers his performance with the same kind of charisma and likability that he naturally manages to deliver with every performance of his, and his chemistry with the rest of the league is absolutely fun to watch. He's not the only one that gives a wonderful performance, however.
Let's go find this son of a bitch.
If there is one character who definitely got the short end of the scalpel in terms of having his contributions reduced, it was definitely Ray Fisher's Cyborg. He was the one character that I was the most excited to see when the Whedon cut finally came out, and was completely disappointed to see that he was reduced to a non-entity with absolutely no character whatsoever. We were clearly robbed of a great performance, and seeing the actual Snyder Cut showed just how talented Ray Fisher is as an actor and how nuanced Cyborg was as a character before they butchered the film and subsequently removed every ounce of character that he had. Kind of weird that almost every other character got a chance to shine and develop except for the one played by a black man.
Yeah, it's a mystery.
Ray Fisher may be a newcomer in my eyes, but after watching the performance he gave in this movie, I'm convinced that he is a star in the making. Cyborg is a pretty complex character to have to play given his origin story, which the movie expertly brings to life with all the pathos that comes from being a victim of circumstances and coming back to life as anything but normal. Zack Snyder said in an interview that his intention was for Cyborg to be the heart of the movie. That heart was missing from the Whedon cut and replaced with an awkward bit of fan pandering.
Booyah.
There are actors capable of performing amazing roles, but there are few and far who were actually born to play certain roles. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Christopher Reeve as Superman, Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther, and Ray Fisher as Cyborg. You can replace the entirety of this cast with different actors and it will be fine, but Gadot and Fisher are irreplaceable. I'd talk more about Gadot and about her wonderful take on Wonder Woman, but honestly, there is nothing I can say here that I didn't already say in my Wonder Woman 1984 review. She is just fantastic as this larger-than-life hero who walked away from the world after fulfilling her responsibilities as a hero, but finding emptiness after losing the one that she holds dear. Now she has a chance to start over with some new friends as one big happy family. I should also point out that the music for this movie is absolutely jaw-dropping. Tom Holkenberg, aka Junkie XL, did one of the best musical compositions I've ever heard for any superhero movie ever. This is right up there with Superman, Batman, and the original Spider-Man movies by Sam Raimi as some of the best musical composition I have ever heard for any superhero movie ever. I cannot recommend this enough. If you have not heard the crew at War Power yet, I highly recommend doing so because it is one of the biggest standout tracks of the movie. As much as I sit here and praise the ever-loving hell out of this movie, I would be lying if I said that the movie was perfect. So, if you'll indulge me, allow me to address a couple of issues I have with the film. Trust me, this movie was damn near flawless, but even the grittiest of movies had at least one blemish or two that kept them from being perfect. Unless we're talking about The Shawshank Redemption. Jason Momoa gives one hell of a memorable performance as Arthur Curry, and in my opinion at least, provided a much better and more nuanced performance than he ever did as Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones. Also, the movie in general is just infinitely better than the entirety of Game of Thrones. How's that for a controversial opinion? That being said, Aquaman feels like the only one of the League members that's given the least in terms of development. He doesn't so much has a character arc, but more or less setup for a character arc that wouldn't be explored until his solo movie came out. Granted, his characterization in the Whedon cut is a far cry from this one, where he went from being an asshole antagonizing Cyborg for literally no reason, to being sympathetic and caring for him despite appearing as a cold and heartless bastard.
We're asking a kid who just lost his father to go up against the most powerful machines in the universe. It's not fair.
I thought you didn't care.
I never said that.
But while his contributions to the film are spectacular, his actual place within the story feels tacked on with a placeholder for his story waiting to be developed. I will speak in great detail over what happened with Superman in this movie. However, I want it to be clear from the get-go that I loved everything that they did with Superman in this movie. From his resurrection to him regaining humanity after being brought back as an empty and angry husk. However, one little issue that I had with his comeback, i.e. from when he dons the slick and sexy black and gray suit, is that throughout this moment, we get to hear dialogue from both of his fathers talking about what wonders he was destined for and the inspiring words telling him to fly. This is a great scene. ruined only by the inclusion of the worst stepdad in movie history next to Gabe Ugliano from Percy Jackson.
Oh, this is gonna suck.
I gotta be very honest. Hearing all of this "you are destined for greatness" crap coming from Jonathan Kent feels extremely out of character for Jonathan goddamn Kent. Because at no point throughout the entirety of Man of Steel has this character ever done anything to make Clark Kent feel like a superhero, nor did he say anything to properly build him up as one, and the few moments he shared with Clark attempting to do so felt very disingenuous, and the context for why was absolutely ridiculous. I will never forgive that movie for this atrocious exchange between the two.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
Okay, first, what? Second, the f***?
I know this is sounding like a complaint being directed at Man of Steel and not Zack Snyder's Justice League, but having such an atrocious character serve as part of Superman's comeback, retrofitted lines or not, really helps dampen an otherwise heartwarming moment where he flies for the first time donning the new suit. Sorry Kevin Costner, nothing personal, I blame the screenwriter. Wait, who wrote this movie again? Oh, of fucking course. I have to address the sad Affleck in the room. Is there really a point in the nightmare scenes knowing this movie is both non-canon and non-getting a sequel? Don't get me wrong, these scenes are fantastic, and unlike in Batman v Superman, they actually serve a functioning purpose here. I guess this really isn't a complaint per se, so much as it is a question of what could have been. Oh, Martha, Martha, Martha.
Why did you say that name?
Sorry, I had to. Snyder, my man, I found justification for it. It's still silly to me, no disrespect. However, her inclusion in the movie is genuinely sweet and inspiring, especially considering that they removed those cringe-inducing cougar lines from the Whedon cut. This entire scene is flawless and perfect. And then it reveals something even more amazing that, while great, I can't really talk about because of spoilers, so please skip to this part of the video if you don't want to be spoiled. You have been warned. After Martha talks to Lois Lane during her grieving period, she inspires her to go back to the world of the living instead of sitting around mourning, since that's not what Clark would have wanted her to do. Amy Adams and Diane Lane have beautiful chemistry, and the scene ends on a bittersweet note of hope. This on its own was fantastic. And then it turns out that wasn't actually Martha.
The world needs you too, Lois.
As a fan, I lost my fucking mind with this. The long-standing theory of General Swanwick secretly being John Jones, aka the Martian Manhunter, was absolutely bonkers, but made so much sense that it would have been stupid not to be true. It also makes sense to establish him in the beginning of the movie before the end shows him talking to Bruce, making his presence known. What doesn't make sense is that now one of the few moments featuring two of the leading women in the movie having a conversation about hope and optimism is now reduced to a male hero donning the appearance of one of the two in order to get the other to come out of her funk. To me, this scene, while great, has its purpose defeated by the reveal of the Martian Manhunter being Martha. This could have been a great reveal if it were used elsewhere, but we never get to see Swanwick anywhere in this movie except for this moment. Why did it have to be this scene? It ruins what is supposed to be a well-established mother-daughter relationship for a cool fanboy Easter egg that doesn't really affect the plot in any meaningful way, and it takes away from the climactic moment at the end of Batman v Superman when Batman realizes the connection he had with Superman, since the person he fought tooth and nail for rescuing wasn't even the same person. With all of that said, there is one more gripe I have with this movie: the big red-haired elephant in the room. Not that red-haired elephant, this one. Look, I'm sorry, I love Amy Adams as much as the next guy, and honestly, casting-wise, I think she was a great Lois on paper. However, again, going back to Man of Steel, she served no functioning purpose as a character aside from either providing exposition, reacting to things, or needing to be rescued by Superman. What boggles the mind is that it feels like her inclusion in the movie was only out of obligation and not because they had a story that they wanted to tell with her. As a result, Lois was a non-entity throughout the entirety of the movie, and Batman v Superman didn't do her any favors. In the theatrical cut of Justice League, she was literally a plot device used by Batman to calm Superman down, implying that the flying fuck knew that Superman was gonna be kicking their asses, yet didn't have her ready on the spot just to prevent any unnecessary destruction or god-awful fucking lines like these!
Yeah. Oh, something is definitely bleeding.
That's stupid! You're stupid! Stop being stupid!
However, in the Snyder Cut, she sees Supes from a distance, manages to quickly teleport there like Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th video game, and instead of telling Supes to get the fuck out of Dodge, she asks him to go home. Lois in this entire movie is dedicated to mourning Superman's death, buying coffee, and mourning Superman's death and buying coffee, and mourning Superman's death, and I think you get the point. She only exists in this movie to continuously react to the death of the man in her life, and is never given a single character-defining moment. This was the same woman who interviewed a terrorist for a scoop at work, yet she is brought down emotionally because of the death of her boyfriend. You know, at least Wonder Woman had the courtesy to beat the shit out of some thugs in the mall while she was mourning over Steve Trevor and stopping the Zack Snyder equivalent of Hans Gruber's goons in the beginning of the movie. Lois Lane was the weak chain in this entire franchise, and it's really a damn shame that the last movie couldn't do anything to improve on her character. Now, before we can end this review and get to the part where I'm sure most people are going to be skipping towards because people care more about an arbitrary number instead of the actual criticism labeled around it, it's time for me to address the big S in the room. Let's talk about Superman.
Ah, boy, here we go.
By now, everyone watching this should know that I hated Man of Steel when it first came out. The internet didn't tell me to hate it, Rotten Tomatoes didn't tell me to hate it, Nostalgia Critic didn't tell me to hate it, the movie itself told me to hate it. Seeing one of my favorite heroes being portrayed in such a careless and reckless manner, followed by that now infamous moment where he killed Zod by snapping his neck, was one of the most traumatizing things I have ever seen on film. Seeing this to me felt like watching a symbol of hope, optimism, and joy be destroyed, crumpled up into dust with nothing but an echoing scream to mirror my feelings. I made a joke in my first impression video of the Snyder Cut where I said that my history with the DCEU was parallel with the events happening in the movies themselves. Superman killing Zod and the subsequent mayhem in Metropolis was Zack Snyder snapping away everything that I knew and loved about Superman in order to showcase a conflicted version of the character willing to go to extremes in order to save the lives of others. Batman looking up at Superman during the rubble is the angry fan in me watching the director killing everything he loved as a child in order to make a sick, twisted version of the characters that didn't need to be deconstructed in the first place, followed by the fight between the two, which would be nothing more than off-brand criticism and dislike for the man and his work. My dislike for Man of Steel has clouded my judgment on a lot of things following the release of Batman v Superman and the rest of the DCEU. While I stand by what I said about having softened my views on Batman v Superman to an extent where I can admit that the movie is at worst a misfire with good intentions, and at best a good movie crushed by the weight of its own ambition, my feelings for Man of Steel are still pretty tumultuous. I want to be clear when I say this because despite me hating Man of Steel, I have nothing but respect and admiration for Zack Snyder both as a filmmaker and as a person. The man has an amazing eye for detail and knows how to get the best out of any scene he shoots. He's also overall just a wonderful human being to be around. He's caring and respectful towards his cast and crew and completely earnest about their talent. He spotted potential in Gal Gadot when nobody else in their right mind thought to do so, and restored her love for cinema when she was planning on quitting acting altogether. Also, despite the release the Snyder Cut movement being comprised of good apples and bad apples, he's very quick to shut down all the bad apples that are supporting his cause.
Just a quick thing before we get started. I know that on our donation page, we still have the Geeks and Gamers logo. I just want to say that I really, we talked about this, and we're really not affiliated with Geeks and Gamers as far as I'm concerned, and I really just want to make that clear. And I also want to just say, in light of recent events, I think we really, if Justice League teaches us anything, it's about coming together, and there's no room for hate. And I just think that it's important. It's an important message, and of course, as the father of the Asian children, it really hit close to home for me. And I just really want to put that out there that we all, there's no room for hate.
Fun fact about that video: 2 Freaks and Gamers members were actually on that stream as he was telling him that. So he literally said that I am not affiliated with you right directly to their faces. I don't care what shit I have to say about Man of Steel. This man is awesome. Watching the ending of Batman v Superman was one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life as a moviegoer. Seeing my childhood hero being killed while saving the world from an indestructible threat was one of the hardest things I ever had to sit through. I had a lot more to say about this, but I think I'll save that for that secret project that I'm working on regarding the Snyder Cut. So for now, believe me when I say, if there was ever going to be one thing about this movie that needed to be pulled off in order for me to get truly invested in it, was how it would portray Superman in a post-Batman v Superman world. And honestly, after watching this, I never in my eyes ever saw Henry Cavill as Superman. Until now.
All the hopes and dreams of Krypton live in you now.
I'm so proud of you, son.
Your mother and I loved you.
Your mother and I knew you would change the world.
Your heart was tested.
I know it's been hard, Clark.
But you gave hope to their world.
You need to show them who you are.
Love them, Cal. The way we loved you.
Fly, son. It's time.
Henry Cavill had the looks and the muscle to play Superman, but he never convinced me that he was Superman due to the writing and the performance. Then again, to his credit, no man can give the best performance they can give when working under material written by David Goyer.
You taught us there is no fate but what we make for ourselves.
Henry Cavill without any doubt shattered any preconceived notions I already had about him for the past 2 movies and delivered a Superman that I could actually get behind and be excited for. Even though he's only on screen for less than, I want to say 40 minutes, he manages to bring all the hope and optimism that was missing from Man of Steel and Batman v Superman back with a sleek black and gray suit to boot. For the first time in this entire franchise, the artist formerly known as Henry Cavill was nowhere to be found. Instead, on screen was Superman. The real Superman.
For Darkseid.
Not impressed.
At the time of writing this video, the movie currently has a 74% critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes, while boasting a 96% audience rating. This is one movie where both seem to be in mutual agreement with one another, no divisiveness of any kind. Of course, some are more critical than others and vice versa, but if the buzz is any indicator, Zack Snyder's Justice League is proving to be a modest hit with a lot of people, and an even bigger hit with the fans. Fans are happy that they got to see the movie that they wanted to see for years now. A brilliant filmmaker got the chance to make the movie he's wanted to make for years. HBO Max now has exclusive content worth advertising itself over. And most importantly of all, the world can finally be quiet about the Snyder Cut. But this isn't over yet. I may not be the biggest fan of, well, fans. Mostly because, as I stated before, the majority of fans that I've seen tend to be awful toxic people who do more harm than good. And while the Release the Snyder Cut movement definitely had plenty of those, I don't care how many dislike this video because I said that. I know in my heart that there are many of them who are nice, sympathetic, and caring people. Plenty who donated to help raise money for mental health awareness and suicide prevention. Over $500,000 was raised by people who owed nothing to anybody and asked for nothing in return. Many of those fans are currently thanking HBO Max and Warner Brothers for the opportunity for this movie to come out, and donating more as a result of this. I wish I had the same clout as these people so I can recommend for others to do the same in a way that people will listen. However, if I learned anything, is that if you don't speak now, people won't listen. So with this video now finally reaching its infernally long end, I have something to say. At one point during the movie, Batman and the Flash drive past a billboard by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention that says, "You are not alone." If you are watching this movie and you read that billboard, please take that to heart. You are not alone. And if you ever feel like you are, please, take it from me, your life is more meaningful and purposeful than you might think. And the fact that you are standing where you are right now is proof that you are overcoming a seemingly impossible task. Like Cyborg says in the movie,
I'm not broken. And I'm not alone.
he's speaking for all of us, and that includes you. You are not alone, and don't ever let anyone make you think otherwise. If you want to make a difference yourself and be a hero to someone else in need, you can go online and donate to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I am very proud to say that this is a cause I support 100%. Zack Snyder's Justice League may not be perfect, but it delivers one of the greatest 180 turns in movie history, as this larger-than-life story with an amazing cast and a miraculously happy ending to its tragic story. Its visuals are incredible, the music is amazing and beautiful, and I can say with confidence it sounds absolutely like no other superhero movie I've ever seen, and it manages to be the kind of superhero movie that DC and Warner Brothers wanted to make but didn't know that they already had. One that is hopeful, optimistic, and lighthearted, while also being mature and violent enough to be a Zack Snyder movie that people can enjoy, and still be a superhero movie that people can love. I'm gonna give Zack Snyder's Justice League a 9 out of 10. The movie is currently available on HBO Max only in the US, while in the UK and elsewhere, the distribution is very wonky and all over the place. Whoever the hell is in charge of distribution, fix this. Now! I never thought in a million years that I, of all people, would be the one singing the Snyder Cut's praises. But I am, and nobody told me to do so, and nobody paid me to do so. I don't want to stop here though. Warner Brothers, if you're watching this, let the success of the Snyder Cut speak for itself. I may not agree with how the DCEU started, but this is a chance for you to help make things right and get the franchise the consistent direction it deserves. Restore the Snyderverse. Enough said. I'm Sebastian from Cinemageddon Reviews signing out, and I'll see you all in the wasteland.